In this tip, we're going to talk about understanding objects in PowerShell. Now, objects are an extremely long and complex subject. We could go on and on about talking about objects in PowerShell, so we need to limit this down a little bit. So in this snip, I'm going to just talk about inspecting existing objects and creating some custom objects. So we're going to scope it down quite a bit. So maybe in some future snips, we could be able to go into more in depth on objects, because objects literally represent everything in PowerShell. All right, so to demonstrate objects, so let's first just inspect some object properties. So an object has properties and methods. So to do that, I would just go ahead and create a very simple object, which you may think that, well, a string is not an object. In some languages, it's not, but in PowerShell, everything is an object. So we have an object here, and it looks like when I just do $color, display it onto the terminal console here, it looks simple. There's nothing to it. Well, there's no properties, no methods, nothing really. So let's inspect this a little bit deeper. By default, PowerShell doesn't return all the properties. It depends on some special formatting rules in the background. So to see what properties this has, and we use select object -property, then define a star, which will then just negates all of the formatting in the background, and then just only shows us the properties and the methods. But it looks like here that it only has one property. So you may think an object normally has lots of different properties in PowerShell. However, we can look at this one property by dot notation. So dot notation is simply appending a dot to the end and then specifying the property name or the method. So select object is not a great way to see all the properties. So there's lots of different circumstances that are a little too complicated to get into here, but great way that you should get used to finding all the object and property is to use the getMember command. So the getMember command, notice here that it returns a lot more than just length. The getMember command is the best command that you can use to do exploration in PowerShell. So notice that with getMember, we see all the methods, all the properties, all the everything. And notice that string only does have this single length property. There's lots of different methods on the string. Now, each property is different. Integers, arrays, and any kind of object type in PowerShell. There's literally thousands of them because it uses the .NET framework. But getMember is a really great way to investigate all of the properties and methods that are on an object. So that's how you would reference properties on an object. We're using the dot notation. We use the dot notation as well for methods, but a method is different than a property because it's a verb, it's an action, it does something, it calls something. In this case, we have our variable here of color, which is a string. And then looking at getMember, you can see that remove is one of the methods. So I'm just picking this at random. We can do any of these. Remove actually removes characters from the string. So let's just try out and see what this does. So when I run this, notice here that we just have RD. It removed the letter E because the remove method in and of itself, the first parameter there, 1, represents the place or the position of the character. So all the characters start as 0. So R is 0, 1 is E, and 2 is D. And the second one there is how many characters to actually remove. In this case, I just wanted to do 1. Now I could change this up to really whatever I want at this point. Remove just allows us to remove whatever we want out of here. So let me bring this up again here. Run this again. All right, there we go. It's still working. So let's say that I just want to remove R. In this case, I can use 0 as the placement here, and it's just going to remove R. Now remove it just, again, it's a sample method. We can use a lot of different ones. There's, we can start hitting tab, and there's another way to figure out what methods are available on this object. We can use anything. So these are methods. The types of methods will depend mostly on the type of object that you have. Okay, I've been talking about types. So what actually are types? Types are ways that define different characteristics for different types of classes and objects. So there's a few of the common ones are the string type. So the string type is what we've been playing with before. It's just a simple string surrounded by quotes. And notice that here with getMember, we have the type name of system.string. Now, if we just use the one here without the quotes, now you can see that we have a different set of methods. So each type has different methods associated with it. And now we have the type of system.int32, or just an integer shorthand. And then here's another example. We can use Boolean values. So notice now that we have system.boolean. Everything is system. That is a namespace. And then we have the type there of Boolean. So there's lots of different types. Everything is an object, and every object has a type. So there's a lot of different ones. Another thing I wanted to quickly show you was I can use a different way to get the type. Other than getMember, notice I was having to scroll up and down for all this stuff. Maybe I just want to know the type. Every object has a getType method on it, which then outputs an object, and I can reference the name to it. So notice that I can quickly get int32 there instead of having to scroll down. That's another way to get the type of a particular object. All right, next, I would like to show you how to create your own objects. In the old days, we used to have to do this the hard way, but now we can use the pscustomobject type accelerator. We would use the new object command, specify a type name of psObject. So notice that now I've actually created an object. There is an object in memory that I can play with, but notice there is no, there's no properties, there's nothing to this thing at the moment. It's just very, very bare bones. And the type name is System Management Automation pscustomobject. So this is the way that you would create these custom objects. Now I want to add a property. There's different types. We're not going to go into all the different member types there is. This is about the easiest way to do this. We use member type, note property. That's the most common that you'll use. The name of the property, in this case, I'm using OS build and OS version, and then the value. You can put the value to, put in some random stuff. Okay, when I run this, now when I look at object, now you can see that we have all of the different ones that I had created. We have the old one, the OSV that I did on accident there. We have OS build and OS version with the values of them. So that's how we can create an object. That was the old way to do it. The new way to do it, we can use the pscustomobject type accelerator. It's called a type accelerator because we don't have to go through all the hassle that we did before. This allows us, the pscustomobject type accelerator allows us to simply define a hash table here. So notice that we have a hash table. If I just bring this in, that's a perfectly acceptable construct how it is. But if we put the pscustomobject in front of that, then that actually transforms that hash table into a pscustomobject type. And I will go ahead and save this to a variable so that we know what's going on here so we can play with it a little bit. So now notice that it has OS build and OS version, exactly the same thing as before. And then if you don't believe me, we can go into getMember here, and then you can see the properties of member type, which is note properties, and we can see that it is a pscustomobject. And just like before, just by looking at one of those native object types, we can use dot notation here and look at the various properties and see that we can reference each of those with our dot notation. So that was a very, very brief introduction to objects in PowerShell. Like I said, I hope that I'm able to do some more of these in the future. But for now, that should get you started understanding the basics of objects in PowerShell.